Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anything that anybody would like pulled from the consent agenda this evening?
I'd like to pull section 3.2 in finance.
Okay, anybody else? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So fiscal 3.2. Lisa, what was your question?
I just was hoping that we could have a little bit of a discussion about the budget transfers that are listed there, and there's a significant amount of money that's being
Yes.
transferred, and so if we could just, if you could
Yes,
just
that's
explain again.
correct. Last year, and this is happening across the state, last year when we did our budget, we did it with account codes for teachers as general codes. During the summer, the state made us change to building codes. And that's so the state controller can verify that there's equality among all the buildings in a school district. So for example, we always coded all the teachers, the special ed teachers in the elementary schools as OA, meaning elementary school. We had to move all those teachers from OA to the building code, to the 01, 02, 05. So that made all these huge changes from one account code to the other one. Plus the rate, that's the big numbers, the millions number. And then of course there was changes during the summer where Joe and the administrative team decided to move a teacher from one building to the other one. So we like to have, we wouldn't only move the amount, the difference of the amount, we will move the whole amount with the teacher so we know where the amounts are. But I would say 95% of that $3 million is the changes on accounting from the state. From now on, obviously, they would stay as a YAC. But that's, we wanted to finish it. We could have done it in September or October, but usually there's changes in the middle of the year. So I wanted to wait a little bit to be sure that every teacher is where it's supposed to be with the new account code.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else have questions about that? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve section 3.2?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There are two other items that were removed from the consent agenda this evening, both of which are donations, and which one is up first?
New York Life.
Oh, thank you. It's hard to see from here. So the first one is a donation totaling $740 from an employee of New York Life. Thank you very much to that employee. These donations are much appreciated. And the other donation is a donation from Special Olympics of New York, a donation of $1,000 from the Special Olympics of New York to purchase new uniforms for the unified basketball team.
Cool.
So that is wonderful as well. Thank you so much to the Special Olympics. Can I get a motion to approve those two items?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody seconded.
Yep.
Okay, which brings us to our hearing from the public on non-agenda items. The Hendrick Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment at this portion of the meeting. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. They should have signed in with Roseanne Squilante and will be called in the order that they signed in. All comments must be directed to the board president. The board will listen to comments and input, but will not necessarily debate or discuss the items. Operational matters will be directed towards school administration for handling. And as a reminder, the board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board does reserve the right to limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Is there anybody who would like to speak this evening? No? Thank you. All right, that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Okay, a few updates. I think one of the big pieces of news that at least has been floating across my desk in email and Facebook and other matters are some of the discussion points and decisions the board made 2 weeks ago to move forward with exploring the potential implementation of the Princeton Plan in our school district starting September of 2021. Shortly after, I scheduled a series of meetings in as many schools as could handle in a short period of time. It started at Furnace Woods last week. I'll meet with BV PTA meeting in early February, the middle school right after our break, and for scheduling discussions with the Frank G PTA in the high school. I think the reality is setting in, unfortunately, and the reason I say unfortunately is because this group has been talking about life after Indian Point for over 3 years since the plant announced its closure. When the plant announced its closure, we were looking at tax increases of 14 plus per year, every year, just in order to balance out. We've learned a lot. We've learned a great deal. We've advocated and partnered with our elected officials. We've networked with key decision makers in the executive cabinet, and I think we have to start to appreciate that things need to be a little bit different in this district. Our average tax increase since the year 2013, average tax increase has been 1.04%. You would be hard pressed or impossible to find another district in suburban Westchester County that has been able to maintain the programs we have been able to build the programs we have, and do it by asking our public for pennies over 1% each year since 2013. But we've been honest with our community. We've been transparent. We have had these discussions for 3 years. I think just as life happens, some people realize that change is going to happen on the doorstep of change, and we very well may be on the doorstep of some very significant changes. We're going to continue discussions with our staff and our parents and our community members. We're going to outline a process of how we engage the community in learning more about the Princeton Plan and what that might mean for us and some of the savings that would create. But I just hope that there is appreciation and an understanding that we're getting close to that point. While we continue to advocate, I have meetings with the governor's team at the end of the month, and with Sandy Galiff and Pete Harcum to continue to advocate. We just received a draft of our state aid run yesterday, and we've discovered an increase in state aid to our district of around $500,000 based on some formulaic changes that will help us. $500,000 is a little over 1 point on the tax levy that would not need to be raised. So our efforts are working, but it is almost impossible to replace $60.5 million of lost revenue. Our district residents pay about 56% of our $80 million budget. State aid and pilots pay the other 45% or 44%. That's a pretty big disparity for districts in Westchester County, particularly districts that are in our immediate area and have schools and students in the town of Cortland. So we're going to continue to press forward and do it in a respectful way, but you know, some of the buzz over the last couple of weeks has been what's next. The board is committed to a thoughtful process that will make sure that we engage the community in a respectful way. But as I said to Furnace Woods PTA parents, the decision is as simple as whether or not the board wants to change the elementary attendance zone policy. And we even heard from some folks at the Furnace Woods PTA, why don't you just do it and get it done? that's an option. I think that this group is committed to not making rash decisions like that. And oftentimes, and I think this will be the case as well, that the process is going to be as important as the outcome. And we have to make sure we get the process right, and I think we will. And we'll start that in early March. In other news, as odd as this is to say, tomorrow marks our final concert of our holiday season at the high school. So we've been to dozens of concerts, and the high school band will wrap that up tomorrow at the high school at 7 o'clock. Our athletic teams are in mid-season form. I know Mr. Baker's here and we'll talk a little bit, but we had breaking news. Is that breaking news public?
Yep.
That one of our outstanding basketball players who's going to Marist College on a basketball scholarship, Caitlin Weimer, was identified as a Con Ed Athlete of the Week, and I know that Mr. Baker will talk a little bit about that in his presentation, so I'll leave it at that. But I'll turn it over to our team to give some updates, and then we'll go to the presentations.
Okay, I'll start. In the realm of technology, we're in the planning phase now of looking at Blue Mountain Middle School's turn for some technology upgrades. So working with their team and really identifying what their needs are as we move to the middle school and the more secondary level. It's going to be a little bit different than what we did with the elementary schools, but working with a team of teachers and administration there to really kind of identify what their needs are, what kind of programs they're running, kind of things that they need. Also working with, around the region, a lot of people in my position in technology are working with BOCES and the Lyric and Southern BOCES and Northern BOCES around some changes in EdLaw 2D. There's going to be a requirement that we appoint someone to a data privacy officer come this July. So getting a little more information around that. And there is a high level of cybersecurity training that all the school districts, including myself, are attending and working around the NIST framework. So trying to really reformat and clean up some of our policies and procedures around that. In the world of HR, we have a new hire today, which is exciting. A new psychologist is being appointed tonight. Working with Frontline, so we brought Frontline on for a lot of our systems for technology, but also managing teachers, professional development, course requests, and we're going to be using them for our human resources onboarding platform, really centralizing everything we're doing. And also a big thing right now is there's been some changes with the certification requirements for 7 through 12 special education teachers. So we've been in the process of meeting with them, Lisa and myself, and Ann and Ellen, meeting with all the special education teachers in the middle school and high school to kind of really go over what these changes are. The state is requiring our special education teachers to have a content specialty to continue to teach self-contained special classes in content areas. So they have the ability to apply for an extension right now, so we're trying to walk them through that process as we're learning it as well, because it just came down from the state a few months ago. So that's been a big thing. So we're meeting with teachers one-on-one now to really go through their individual profile and help them in the application process to make sure that they can continue to teach the courses that we want them to teach in middle school, high school.
So I just see the word meetings. That's about what we're doing now. That's our extent. So we are in the full swing. We started 5:04 when we returned, and we are now in the process of beginning our CSE meetings. A big news that Margaret and I have been working on is executive functioning, as we talked last time. We actually are going to bring our trainers to the district and get a few people from each building to get it trained in executive functioning so all kids will have access to it, not just a small population, which is important. And budget planning, really looking at our kids out of district. Can we bring them back? Can we get more tuition kids? How can we supplement the budget as we have been working with Enrique on tuitions and everything like that?
I want to say ditto. We do so many things together. So it's that time of the year when Enrique introduced the budget conversation with our elementary principals the other day. So Laura and I will be following up with them before Monday to look at things that they need coming out of textbook and workbook codes and planning for curriculum for next year. We have our next early release day on Monday, so there'll be some PD people in from the outside to work with people and a lot of internal work going on in each grade and department. I've scheduled my monthly visits for the schools to look at teaching, so I always start with the probationary teachers. I've already had the pleasure of seeing several of those young people teach for us, and it's been very exciting, and I'll move on to tenured staff as well. What else? There's so much stuff going
We're
on.
working with probationary teachers now.
We are coaching them through their portfolio
Portfolios.
presentations for all of you. So we had a few people that just this afternoon that need to share by February 1st. So they just wanted to kind of make sure that they have polished every last item for presentation. And that's always exciting to talk to them and also to get good feedback about things we can tweak in the process. So that's pretty much it.
Enrique's going to give a budget update, so we'll turn it back over.
Okay, did you want to do presentations before committee reports?
Either way. It's probably the only committee would pursue policy, so yeah.
Lisa has it for the whole
Any other thing?
committee.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, we'll do committee reports next, and we'll do the presentations.
Okay, so Mr. Baker,
We'll do presentations first, and then we'll do committee reports.
Mr. Baker's here to speak
Baker,
after you,
please.
Lisa.
No, it's okay. We're gonna flip-flop it.
Nobody listened.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here for our report presentation. As Rockford alluded to, we did have a good piece of news today for another Con Ed Award scholarship winner today. Spent the afternoon at the county center with our cheerleaders who are performing in the Westchester County Championship down there. So at any moment, hopefully we'll get some good news on them. It was a pleasure to go see them. But I wanted to highlight some of the success that we have here, that we're very proud of here in our community. We still maintain a good participation rate. Over 50% of our students in grades 7 to 12 play a sport. We still maintain our GPA of the athlete versus non-athlete is higher. We still are producing New York State Scholar Athlete teams. I can now say that this slide is incorrect because now it's 4 winners thus far for our Con Edison Scholar Athlete winners. It's something that I'm very proud of. Hendrick Hudson, we are probably one of the most successful in that award area across the entire region. Today, when Caitlin won it, she was the 114th winner. And the only schools that have more than us are some of the bigger schools, White Plains and New Rochelle's down county. So we've been very successful for decades in that regard, something we're very proud of. We've had league champions already, sectional champions. We've had New York State qualifiers. Our athletes like to do a lot of work for community awareness, and they raise money for various charities. Those are some of the ones that they like to raise money for. We have another one coming this Saturday. Our boys basketball team is playing another mental health awareness game. We continue to do a sportsmanship promotion, which is always a popular thing, and we take some of our current athletes and our elementary students and work with them, and we put posters at our elementary schools, and it's now coming around. I've been doing it for so many years that some of the kids in the program were in 2 posters. They were there as 3rd and 4th graders, and now they're there as leaders in our community as 11th or 12th graders. So it's pretty cool to see that as we go around to our schools. Our alumni connection continues to be strong. Our Hall of Fame weekend is one of the most popular weekends of athletics of the year. It's a popular day. We have more and more teams creating alumni games with them coming back to support our current athletes. The Hall of Fame area was refurbished still. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress every year. So it's something that I enjoy doing, and the kids like seeing a lot of the stuff we've had. The unified sports, as Mr. Hochreiter alluded to, this is something that Hen Hut is clearly at the forefront of. We started this program last year. Myself and 4 other athletic directors took the initiative to really start that in the community, in the entire section. So there were 5 schools last year. Somehow I've become the unofficial Section 1 chairperson of this program, which I'm enjoying. And so now this year we have about 12, maybe even 13 schools we found out today. So it's a program that's continuing to grow, and programs and communities are excited for this. So we'll look to start that up again with the kids that will be participating in it, probably the first week of April, and run it through April and May as well. It was very popular last year, and our kids are already excited for it. As you know, our athletic complex we very excitedly opened up this past fall, and some of the fiscal responsibilities I put in here as well. You'll see as we get to some of the numbers, we were able to, myself and Liz Gilio, work with an internal reduction to reduce some of our transportation for next year. And then the old overtime, we're going to hold the line again. I spoke with Anthony Merlini in regards to that. We cut back some of the holiday time that some teams might be practicing on particular days where overtime was going to be used at the practice. Our team was there. We'll hold small windows for that matter. So Anthony and I are able to hold that line. And as we get into the numbers for this year, there's going to be two different slides. This is the contractual salary, the budget lines for all the contractual pieces. So the first one is coaching salaries. The number that we had this year, you can see, is $482,825. Through some attrition of coaches and just a changeover now, we're going to be able to come in a reduction for that for next year. So that's going to come in even with the contractual obligations that we have for that. So it's a little bit less. It's a minus 1.1%. Staff salaries, which are people in the athletic office that work, is the contractual obligation of that increase of 1.73. And then there's a small overtime that I do for whether it be Nicole Loretti in the office or Meg Griner in the office. That sometimes things come up, specifically in the summer prior to when sports come up. But we'll handle an internal reduction there from 2,500 down to 2,000. So the overall contractual, you can see there it's a little under 0.1 negative %. So it's a little bit of a savings there. The remaining lines are the non-salary and the non-salary, non-contractual lines. So our equipment line is a major. This is where I'm able to save a bulk of our money. We do not need to replenish a lot of the equipment in the weight room since we were able to do that last year. So that can be a significant decrease. The supplies and the contractual, even with those other decreases, you'll see there are some increases there, and I'll get into that in some of the others in the upcoming slides. But our supplies, our contractual, which is a variety of different things that we have to do. Our BOCES costs for Section 1 offices, our chaperones, these are all some slight increases. As I said earlier, the transportation one, in working with Liz Gilio, we are able to come in at a slight reduction there. So with all of that, it's a negative 5.4% savings with all of that. But I do want to come back to some of the, oh, there you go. There's the total budgetary with the total contractual and the total non-salary and non-contractual. So altogether, it's minus 1.95%. And I did want to speak a little bit about the line increases. Thank you. So the staff salaries with an increase, as I said, that's contractual. The supplies increase, the main reason for that is there are a lot of changes from New York State Public High School Athletic Association and the NFHS, National Federation of High School, for safety requirements. There are a lot of different sports that are coming in with various safety requirements where much of our supplies at the end of this year will not be able to be used. They have to be thrown out and discarded due to some safety regulations coming up. And that kind of ties into the next one with the contractual. Some of the reconditioning of some of the equipment now is also going to be mandated. Some stuff I have to mandate to get it reconditioned, so there's all sorts of regulations coming up for safety guidelines with the NFHS specifically. The BOCES line, the specific reason for that one is that there's a new contract for officials that has gone into effect this year. There's additional fees from the BOCES, and then with their increase in line, that's why there's a slight increase there. The chaperones had a slight increase. It's very hard to predict that one. I talked to Enrique a lot on that, or Mr. Mack and Mr. Anderson. We work all the time on that. And a lot of it is sometimes successive teams, who you play. If you have a string of rivalry games and we're having large crowds, we have to plan accordingly. Sometimes there's things that we have to be prepared for, and working with other school districts and myself working with my fellow athletic director and be prepared for something that we know may have happened outside the athletic fields or in the schools that we have to be prepared for, and we have to come planned accordingly with the various chaperones. So a slight increase for that reason for that.
And sometimes postseason.
And that's good. Yeah, so if you have a lot of teams that do good, that's going to affect the coaching. It's going to affect the chaperones. And as I said, I think this year for this presentation, I think we maintained being fiscally responsible here. The attrition that we had, we were able to save some money, and some of the internal reductions and the planning of the long term there with our weight room, and unfortunately some of the other increases I don't have a choice with in terms of the New York State regulation. So we still offer 31 different varsity programs. We have 64 teams. We have the ample opportunity. Kids are taking advantage of it. It's a great part of their day. I know they're excited when practice and game time starts. So I think that we do a lot of great stuff here, and our community's proud of it. And it's always an exciting part of the day going out and see our student athletes perform at their levels daily. So it's something that I'm proud of, and I know the community enjoys it as well. So, and I always put this quote up there. Coach Doug Fritz favorite quote, it's a great day to be a sailor. So, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Baker?
It's great.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, moving along, Enrique will give an update on a budget update on any recent developments in the last couple of weeks, and then break out our administrative portion.
Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the administrative budget and also give you an update on the budget. As always, I love the art that the high school sent to us, so all can be proud also from the art standpoint, beautiful picture. So I'll start with the budget update and then go to the administrative budget. So from last 2 weeks ago, the board tasked administration to have an expense reduction across the board of 5% for non-salary expenses. So we were able to cut about $225,000 in non-salary expenses. Also, we got the final New York State tax cap. It's an increase from 2% to 1.81%. For good or for bad, that's not relevant for us because our tax cap is in the 10%. But you should know that we're going to have a tax cap of 10% compared to all our districts around the area, that it's going to be around 1.81%. On January 8th, we talked about a budget of 81.6 to 82.6. Today we are still within that budget of 82.3. That's an increase of $2.2 million, and it's a percentage increase of around 2.9%. Our preliminary tax levy was $47.5 million. Today it's a little bit less because of some of the expense reductions that we talked, 47.3. Last year, our tax levy was 43.7 million, so that's an increase in our tax levy to 8.2% from 8.71%. I also want to remind everyone what Joe said. Our state aid came about $500,000 more than expected. We also expect about 3 retirements. Those 3 retirements, if we decide to hire new people, will give us a savings of about $250,000. So in my next budget presentation, we'll know in February because teachers have until January 31st to give us the retirement papers. So now we're going to talk about the smallest part of our budget, the administrative budget, but equally important than the other 2 parts. So here you can see how our budget is divided. You have program, that obviously is curriculum and instruction, the biggest part. Then capital, which is all our debt, our capital, and also our facilities, maintenance, etc., etc. And then the smallest part, the administrative budget. And the administrative budget is divided by general support, central services, general administrative, and curriculum and instruction. The first part is the general support, and it starts with the Board of Education. The Board of Education will set aside money for them to go to training. If we have new members, the new members have to attend training programs. So that part will be about, I cannot see from here, it looks like $600 to $700, but increase of $200. And the board always needs a district clerk. In the district clerk, we have one person that includes the salary and all the expenses related to that and the expenses related to the budget. So for this year, we expect a decrease of about 11% in this part of the budget. Central administration starts with the superintendent. The first line represents the superintendent's salary, the secretary's salary, supplies, equipment, and everything that is needed by the superintendent. That part is going to be reduced 7%. The next line is my business office. My business office will be like four and a quarter people. That's going to be basically flat, a reduction of $895. I always like to separate the school resource officer expense out of my budget, but as we all know, we have an agreement with Westchester County, and we pay 100% of the salary and benefits of the school resource officer. So for this year, there's going to be an increase of a little bit less than 5% of $5,000 or 3.2%. And then finally, we have treasurer, auditors, tax, everything that the taxes we need to pay City of Peekskill to send the tax bills to our residents in the City of Peekskill. We have internal and external auditors that we have to pay, and that's an increase of 1.4%. So our total central administration will have a decrease of about 1.7% or $25,000. Central services represent legal costs. We maintain the same legal costs. We fortunately know, thanks to the good work of all the administration, that our legal costs have not risen in the last several years, and we are working hard to maintain them that way. Then we have personnel department. There's three people in that department. It includes materials, supplies, and the increase is mainly contractual, 3.2%. Then we have our public relations, that's Karen. We need to work proposes to get 40% of that money back. That will increase $400. And then our unallocated insurance, that's insurance for our students. All our students are insured, health insurance in case there's any problem, they cannot pay for insurance, we step in. And finally, our proportional part of our POSIS administrative fees, that's going up 1.9%. And Joe and I are having a meeting with POSIS because the way they account for our proportional part is based on our wealth ratio for the last 3 years. So Joe and I are having a meeting with them to let them know that our wealth ratio, unfortunately, is going to go south from here. So we expect next year to be less. But there's an increase of 2% in the central services. Curriculum and development. The first line is Margaret and her team. There's 2 people, here and Jane. That's a contractual increase of 1.5%. Then strategic planning is money that Joe uses for new endeavors. The endeavors are getting smaller and smaller, so we're lowering by 5%. Then we have curriculum and development, a decrease of 2.5, and then the big number at the bottom are the secretaries and principals in all our buildings. The only administrators that we don't have here are Tommy Baker, because he's in the athletic budget, and Lisa and Christine, because that's coming in special education. So, for the administrative budget, the total is $5.1 million, an increase of $64,000, an increase of 1.3%. Thank you to the Henry Hudson High School art students for the beautiful pictures. Thank you for all of you to listen to this presentation. I know it's not what you came to see today, but it's part of a bigger picture.
Is the BOCES administrative fees, are we thinking those could change and affect our 2020-21 budget based on the wealth ratio, or will that be something that will happen later, further down the road?
That's what Joe and I want to discuss with the superintendent in BOCES. It usually takes the last 3 years, but in any regular time, the last 3 years can go up 1%, 2%. Here we're talking going down 20%.
Right.
So that's why we want to see if they give us some break and say, okay, you really are going to go 20%, 40%, 8% down in your pilots, and that represents a significant increase in wealth ratio. Maybe we can accelerate it instead of being a 3-year average, we can go 2 years like that, at least it's a third more. But again, it's, when I had the first conversation with the assistant superintendent for business from BOCES, and he was very receptive, but he said this has to be a BOCES decision. They might even have to go to their board to approve. I'm not sure, but I assume that will have to happen.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Enrique. Okay, that brings us, I guess we're going to do committee reports with the policy reading. So that brings us to our next audience comment section. This is the hearing of the public on agenda items. Same rules as apply as earlier.
Should that be the policy meeting? Is there one different?
It's in here in between them. So number 9 is audience comments. Do we have anybody who'd like to comment on the presentation? Okay, that brings us to our committee reports, finally. Lisa, we'll start with you and then we'll do the policy.
We had a safety committee meeting since our last Board of Ed meeting. We're getting closer to having a safety and bullying reporting system district-wide. We're finalizing some details, but it's looking good. Discussed the status of the capital improvement projects, and we're expecting to have bids by the end of January for the front entrances and safety upgrades and also the auditoriums and all that kind of stuff. So that should be moving along nicely too. Westchester Putnam School Board Association had a meeting that I attended as well. We discussed the governor's State of the State address and its impacts on education. Specifically, there's the school funding transparency, which Enrique had touched on actually, we talked about, where we're going to be required now to say how much of our money is going to educate children in different ones of our buildings. And being able to, they're looking for people not allocating adequate resources to the neediest schools. And so we're trying to, we're going to have to deal with all of that. In addition, there's going to be additional funding for master's teachers programs that is in the governor's budget, and money to develop statewide curriculum on diversity and tolerance. There's also a comprehensive vaping and e-cigarette control package that includes prohibiting the sale of flavored vaping products and restricting advertising that targets youth. There's also some changes to the STAR program, and another part of the thing is that there's a $6 billion deficit in Medicaid, and we're concerned that's going to get pushed back to the local areas and affect our property taxes because of that. So That's pretty much it. We're gonna be working hard. The governor, everybody's in session right now. Everybody's in session right now with the legislative branches, and they're hammering out the details of the budget. And so Westchester Putnam is working hard to be there and to help influence those discussions.
Thank you, Lisa. We did have a policy committee meeting this past month, actually just a couple weeks ago. And we have a policy reading that came from that policy meeting. Would either you or Lisa like to introduce this policy?
You want to
or-
start it, and then we'll...
Okay, sure. Corey, you want to read the policy?
Sure. Policy 5131, homeless children. The Board of Education
Move
recognizes...
to waive further reading of policy 5131.
Okay,
Someone
so...
need a second?
So this is one of a series of policies that Lisa has been working on with our attorneys to update them based on different changes in laws and regulations. And there is a lot here. So basically an overhaul of the McKinney-Vento Act and edited into our policy that was last approved back in 2013. So Lisa, if you want to fill in any salient points, but there's a lot here and it's worth reading. But again, this is a federal law, comes out of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act, and these are some changes that federal government have passed out.
So the overview of everything that this says is that we are responsible for educating students that are doubled up, that have lost their home, have been evicted. They are still a Hendrick Hudson School District students. So students that live in White Plains in the shelter, they are still us. They get transported here from the county. We are responsible for their education. Students are homeless and go into foster care. We are still responsible if we pay their tuition at another school. So my role is to work with families, work with children, make sure that they have supplies, they have clothes, they have their help, they're looking for places to live. It goes a little bit outside of my specialty because I'm not a real estate agent, but that's part of the role. And that we are required by law to transport them and educate them. They're at no time to be kept out of school because of their homelessness, and it depends even where they live. If the child moves from here to Lakeland, they're in the Lakeland district, but they claim homeless, I do an investigation. If they have a signed lease and it is a permanent, they're not sharing, I deem them not homeless. So when I started, I think we had close to 25 homeless students in the district. And I reviewed them on a yearly basis, and I think we're down to 8 to 10 right now. And some of them are temporary homeless, we know that, because they're waiting for their mother to get money from the first of the month to get an apartment. And they'll have a lease. So these are the kind of cases that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't matter if they're special ed or not, they still come through my office. So that's the gist of it. There's been a lot of legislation and there's a lot of advocacy out there. I do webinars probably once a month on this, and I have someone sit with me and we take diligent notes. Are we doing this? Are we doing this? And I meet with the families once a year. So, and we go over the questionnaire, we talk about where are you living, what does it look like. If they go within, if they go more than 50 miles, we do not have to educate them. They then become the next school district's student. So we have a family of 3 that live 49 miles from here, 49.2. So we have to drive, and those kids, it's more about the kids that I care about. They're on the bus for an hour and a half because they have to take their brother up to P&W BOCES, then they come back down here. Now that they're in different buildings, it makes it even more difficult. So it's the impact of the student, not as much as I'm concerned about us having to educate. It's more about the impact on the students. So that's the general overview of this. It is actually beneficial to read because Corey and I were talking. He's like, there's something about, and I'm like, yeah, it's a federal law, and it's something that you don't hear about a lot because we try not to really publicize it, and we actually use the word displaced, not homeless. In my field, we say, I understand you're displaced, and there's a lot of paperwork that goes with this for the families too, and some of them may not be able to do that independently, so they sit with myself or Charlotte and do the work.
Any questions about this policy? Since it's a revision, I think we can approve it tonight, right? We don't need a second reading.
Oh, this seems,
Isn't most of this curiosity, isn't most of this sort of from NYSBA? Some of the, a lot of
This
the.
is written by lawyers.
doesn't.
So this
isn't
isn't
there-
this isn't a
this is not
canned
a boiler-
package,
No.
like
I
some of
appreciate-
our other policies.
No, I
Right.
understand that, but since it is state law, shouldn't it be sort of, for lack of, I don't like the word canned, but shouldn't it be more
A shared,
boilerplate?
yeah, boilerplate.
Sometimes we get, we get recommended policies from NISBA that the committee reads, that are optional or suggested, usually the ones that are mandatory.
But
the
this
ones
can't
that
be
are-
suggested, this
No,
has-
no, that's what I'm
No,
saying,
this
usually
is
the ones that
mandatory.
are mandatory would come from, the legal team.
This may, and also you may have gotten this a couple of years ago and nobody updated it. So as I was going through my policies,
No, I understand, but wouldn't this be, again, I'm looking at all the red and stuff and the discussion about with the attorneys, but wouldn't this have already been, I mean, wouldn't there be a policy updated and good to go if this is New York State through NISBA?
that's, I don't work with NISBA, Joe does, so I'm not,
I mean, I would just think
Well-
that they
Didn't come
have
across our
something.
plate, a recommended policy from NISBA didn't come across our plate, and each meeting we go
There's
back,
not something
we
to
go back
even
through
just
the.
pull out and,
Not for this particular one.
Well, that was one of my questions, because then it goes into just reading that first paragraph. I'm the accountant in the group, so I'm not the great English person, but that first paragraph seems really, really choppy. And if you read it, it's suggesting existing barriers to education, including enrollment, attendance, and success. It almost makes it sound like success is a barrier to educating our children. I don't feel like this reads right.
well, if
There's
you read
either
it, it says
there's
enrollment
comma
and-
there's yeah, but there's commas or something missing, or
it's a long sentence, I do know that.
and I'm used to reading tax law,
Yeah,
and
I
if
know.
I think this is off, I mean tax law is really, really
boring.
bad and
Yeah.
long sentences that are paragraphs.
We can-
Mine, honestly, my question was not, I'm not so worried about the semantics of, but again, the fact that if it abides by what's required, honestly, there's sort of a part of me, and I know I sound harsh, but you'd suggested something that if a child is a foster child, and we're obligated, I mean, if somebody is
If it's
adopted,
homeless to foster, yes.
homeless to foster, and that child, but if that child is, he's a foster child, he's now living in Cold Spring, and that's where mom and dad are, why is that child and not Cold Spring's responsibility? Just, and, or why, you know, why are we paying for Haldane, why are we paying Haldane? Why is that not, that child not, in you know, the responsibility? So my thought is just, if this is NISBA, I would hope that NISBA would be able to, given their resources, cull together, you know, all the legal requirements and sort of, you know, I just wanna make sure that, I don't wanna pay more than we have to, and I don't want to not educate a child if we have to. I just wanna make sure that it's, you know, it just seems like, I don't want an individual policy, I'd rather have the state policy and.
Yeah,
and-
why recreate the wheel?
Yeah, well, and even make
Well, I
sure we
think
cover
there's
everything,
updates to the
so-
policy, because this was done in 2013, so we're looking at 7 years.
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't update it,
Right.
but update it with a
With what the New York.
globally
Yeah.
created, you know, statewide
Well,
type
we'll go to
policy.
NISBA, I don't know that NISBA has that, I mean, we don't subscribe to their policy service, we,
I thought we did.
If you take a look at the references on the last page, my understanding based on what we talked about was that the lawyers reconciled to the actual laws.
Exactly. It's
And
the
what they
law.
did was they said,
This is what I'm
okay,
asking.
based on the wording we have here, this complies with law, this does not, this is missing, this is
Exactly.
omitted, and they just filled in the blanks, and they crossed out what was not applicable based on the reference documents on the last page. That was my understanding. So I didn't wanna, you know, as far as wording and what they said, I would assume that it comes from the law itself. So, you
So
know,
we're
unless
gonna-
there's something that's truly unclear, I didn't have an issue with when we read it.
I just, again, my thought, I mean, looking at the modifications, I'm surprised to know that there's not a policy that's already created that, you know, yes, it would be our revisions, but that we could not just adopt and with the current requirements and just basically get,
And modify that to our
or
needs.
take that and
Well,
replace
so-
ours with whatever the new
I
So
is.
policy
think
that
we were
will-
just changing it to match what it's
to
supposed to
match
be.
our language. We're
Right.
going to, we're
So
gonna
they're
present a
using-
policy in 3 weeks that is a recommended NISBA policy that NISBA sent to us, that we currently don't have. that will read different and feel different, and then if we adopt it, that will become ours for future revisions.
Yes.
That's what our attorneys did. Our attorneys took the law, absent a NISBA or an Erie One BOCES policy, and basically said the red text are changes in the law that need to go into the existing format of the policy that was last approved in 2013. But we do not, as an organization, we do not subscribe to the NISBA policy service. It was a decision that was made 6-8 years ago. We cost out what it was to join NISBA policy service and also Erie One BOCES, and we decided against it. Because part of our retainer agreement with our corporate counsel is that they will recommend and review some of the policies. So we felt at the time we would be double dipping. So that's why some are updates, some are brand new. But I wouldn't.
The first paragraph, going back to my initial comment, is 6 lines long. The first 4 lines is 1 sentence. Nobody else has a problem with the way that first sentence reads. I had to read it 3 times, and if I have to read it 3 times, that's not clear.
It's not the
I'm more
way I
worried
would
about
write
the
a book,
detail than the clarity.
right?
Well, if someone's going to hold you to it, you want it clear. Because these are what we're suggesting how we're going to operate,
I didn't think
which
we-
is our guideline, and
Okay.
then people can hold us to
I
that.
So
think
let me read the first paragraph, right? We waived
Well, I
the
was
reading
gonna
before,
say,
but
you
let
know-
me read it and let's see if it sounds off, right?
Okay.
So the Board of Education recognizes its responsibility under federal and New York state laws and regulations to identify homeless children within the district, encourage their enrollment, and eliminate existing barriers to their education, including their identification, enrollment, attendance, or success in school, which may exist in district practices.
And the way you read it and the way it reads is not the same, because you put in commas where there aren't.
But that's,
I'm serious.
I mean,
We're a school district. You have a list of things. You don't put commas between them?
Well, we've got a law book that we look at every day too, and we make our adaptations.
I don't know if the punctuation would make a difference in the intent of the language.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying, I think
is-
it's more the intent that we're looking at, and where, again, my question is just more, my concern was reinventing the wheel, or making sure that everything was covered, but as long as that's there and it's done, I'm fine, I'm not worried about like
Existing
how
barriers.
Listen,
easy
I would
to
Like
read
those
it
are the
is.
existing
I'd give him an
barriers.
85 on this paper, right? If I were to correct this.
Get one of the
I-
English teachers here.
But you know, sometimes if the lawyer says the B is good, and the lawyer's the expert, you know, who am I
Will
to
the
say?
B hold up in court?
Will the B hold up in court? That's all right. Then we'll get another lawyer to sue that lawyer if something happens.
All right, do we have enough consensus to send this forward, or do you want to send it back to the committee?
I'm okay with
Are you
it.
okay with it?
Yes, so,
Lisa?
I'm okay with it too.
Cory's okay with it? I'm okay with it.
So 1 against.
Yes.
So you can pass it.
Okay.
You got 4 to
I have a
1.
motion to approve the changes to homeless children's policy 5131.
So moved.
second.
All in favor? All against?
1.
Okay, thank you very much. We did the committee reports, okay. All right, so we're up to board comments, new business, anybody have anything? No, then can I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?